Hello, everybody. Today, I'll be talking about my hypothesis and factoring in a holistic manner as to why you have multiple sclerosis, what it is, and how to actually treat it. So this video will be demonstrating a hypothesis based off of multiple different factors that culminate together to result in MS in the modern day population. With the overarching genetic causation and dietary absence of DHA and EPA in people who have lost the functional ability to make DHA and EPA endogenously, being the primary causative factor leading to multiple sclerosis in the modern day. However, there are other potentiating factors that greatly exacerbate the issues already at hand here that I've just mentioned. So, the disease. What is multiple sclerosis? Multiple sclerosis is a chronic autoimmune disease of the central nervous system in which the immune system mistakenly attacks the myelin sheath, the protective coating surrounding the nerve fibers throughout the body, while also providing a potentiating factor for all signaling pathways through the nervous system. And MS affects 2.9 million people worldwide, and its common symptoms are fatigue, muscle weakness, spasticity, vision problems, numbness, cognitive impairment, mood changes, and a gradual loss of coordination and balance. And there's two main types of MS. Relapsing remitting, which is the most common, obviously. And it's characterized by long episodes of substantial MS degeneration and symptoms subsided after a while, which is the episodic factor. So it subsides for a small amount of time before it progresses, or effectively it's just episodic. Now you have progressive MS, which is the worst kind, which is the chronic disability, where effectively your nervous system chronically degenerates and it just does not stop. And it's not characterized by any remission, supposedly. And I'm here to break this. I'm here to say my hypothesis, and I think it's a very much backed in a long-standing chain of reasoning that actually makes sense, and it's an actual solution to what is at hand. And I'll go into that in a bit about the solution. So the multiple sclerosis occurs when coastally adapted humans with genetics adapted for a fish-heavy diet encounter the modern diet stripped of their marine fatty acids that their genome was calibrated for. And this is replaced with omega-6s that actively displace the signaling omega-3s that are critically necessary for nervous system function, which are DHA and EPA, are the omega-3s. So a diet heavy in omega-6s reduce omega-3 absorption, which is DHA and EPA. You need the DHA and EPA, and the omega-6s, they compete for absorption, and they stop enzymatic activity of the DHA and EPA as they compete for the same absorption pathways, while at the same time promoting neuroinflammation in people who have evolutionarily lost function significantly in their ability to make omega-3s endogenously. Right. So effectively, I'm saying that coastally adapted humans have lost the ability to make DHA and EPA. And this is most prevalent in northern and cold fatty fish ancestrally hunting peoples. Predominantly North Europeans, and the genes present are also found in Inuits and other high latitude peoples. But effectively, it's found in coastal populations, is what I'm saying, is the cause. It's a genetic cause where you cannot make omega-3s on your own. And in the modern society where you're flooded absolutely with omega-6s, you cannot produce enough omega-3s to be signaling correctly. And so your nervous system gets replaced by not just omega-6s. Yes, it does get replaced in some amount, but it's primarily by the suboptimal fats in general. Your nervous system is being run on water when it's meant to use diesel. It's meant to be on rocket fuel. And this is just fundamentally critical, firstly, in how a complete deficiency in DHA and EPA will completely stop any neural and nervous tissue repair and regrowth. This is holistically throughout the entire body. It will stop this process. If you do not have any DHA and EPA, you physically cannot bridge the gaps to repair neurons, and you cannot repair the myelin sheath in a closed system like this. The only way your body would be able to repair any neurons is by sacrificing other neurons to take the DHA and EPA out, and with the minute amount it gets from that, and then to use it into the other neurons to repair it. in a nervous system that cannot generate the signals properly, it cannot signal correctly because it doesn't have enough DHA in the nervous system. It will not be able to correctly control and stop attacks from the immune systems, thus resulting in widespread autoimmune action throughout the nervous system and throughout the body holistically, without any ability to repair such damage. All of this being catastrophically worsened by a modern environmental, toxin-filled environment, and a general modern diet being massively lacking in vitamins, but most imperatively being in vitamin D, as it's most critical it's the master vitamin for immune function control. You need it to be able to tell your immune cells to stop attacking your nervous system or any part of your body, but especially the nervous system here. You need it to be able to tell your immune system to stop attacking your nervous system so that it can actually heal. And if you don't have enough vitamin D as a cofactor or even used as the signal in the signaling process, you just simply cannot tell it to go off. You can't switch off the immune system there, and it's so critical here. And especially a general lack of vitamins are going to massively propagate this, as well as a massive environment that's massively toxic and pro-oxidative. Things like smoking, they're massively pro-oxidative. They're going to damage your body, and especially if your body does not have the actual it does not have the myelin sheath, because it doesn't have the fats necessary to make the myelin sheath properly work. It cannot even defend its nerves, so its nerves are just vulnerable. And especially another main cause I'll go into this in a second very swiftly, but a quick side tangent first off. So the latitude gradient is one of the most correlative things with MS. And generally, populations living above the 30th parallel are what are associated with having populations with MS. Obviously, it's predominantly found in Northern Europe, as you'll see below, but it starkly rises after the 45th latitude. So it's far more prevalent in northern countries than it is southern countries. And I'll give you the reasoning in a very shortly. So the highest risk regions, obviously being Scandinavia, Scotland, Finland, Northern Germany, England, Ireland, North America, Australia, and New Zealand. What do you think the genetic causation is there? I'll let you have a guess. It's because of genetic adaptation to a coastal diet, and in the modern diet, you are not meeting the specialist diet you've been adapted for, because you do not have enough DHA and EPA in your diet, and you have far too much omega-6 that's swamping out any DHA and EPA you are going to be making anyway. You're going to be eating anyway. And so the lowest risk regions of MS in the world are Sub-Saharan Africa and Equatorial Asia as well. And this is generally associated with the fact that there's just so much of a vitamin D. Now, there's just so much vitamin D that comes off from the equator, and being in very sunny places. But I'm also here to pose the fact that they're also eating the ancestral diet. Even people who adapted from coastal populations here, they still eat their diet. And I'll show you this now. In Japan and East Asia, they are very high latitude comparatively to the world. And they predominantly subsist off fish. So you would think that they would also have a massive crisis with MS, multiple sclerosis in the modern day. But no, they don't. And that's because they still subsist, even partially, off of a fish-based diet, because they are able to get enough DHA and EPA to actually function at a critical level in at least some capacity. And obviously, I've just linked a bunch of links and causations in this, but they all add up in a diet that is traditionally high in seafood, because seafood, especially fish, cold fatty fish, which is also the highest in DHA and EPA, is incredibly high in vitamin D as well at the same time. So it's a two-pronged approach as to solving your multiple sclerosis, is to eat way more fish in this regard, but also in general a nutritious diet. And going back to obviously the modern diet shift, having a massively omega-6 dominant processed foods in the most of your diet, things like McDonald's, your local kebab shop, all of that is drenched absolutely to the T with omega-6. And this is absolutely antithetical to what you want. If you have MS, you absolutely want to minimize this at all costs, and you want to maximize your omega-3s. So your nerve cells control signaling through an extremely fluid critical fat called DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. And it acts as a hypersensitive signaling molecule in the body. And it's absolutely essential for electrical signaling in your nervous system. You absolutely need it. Your brain is roughly 60% of it is dry fat weight, and 10% of that is pure DHA. Your brain is a hog of DHA. It's absolutely quintessential, and it's the single most important signaling molecule in the entire body. Your nervous system absolutely depends on this, and every single cell in your body even has like a very tiny amount of DHA in the lipid bilayer because it's so optimal for cellular signaling. You need it. You absolutely need it. And as shown below, this is a healthy neuron. You have sufficient DHA, sufficient EPA in the body to defend your nerves in general, because EPA is the body's precursor to some of the body's absolute strongest class of healing factors and antioxidants. You can think of it like that. They effectively cut into inflammation, and especially neuroinflammation in this regard. And they just stop any signal from going out. They stop the cytokine storm. They stop that. They stop the actual inflammatory pathways that actually massively promote the degenerative aspect of MS. But in general as well. So obviously, this is at least a mostly good functioning myelin sheath. Hello. I thought I should best be doing this in a second rerun of this, because I can explain it in better detail. So effectively, your myelin sheath is massively made up of DHA, and it needs its structure to be able to communicate properly. But effectively, if you're missing this myelin sheath, and you also have a vitamin D deficiency, I'm going to explain this where it all culminates together in a second. But effectively, so vitamin D binds to a receptor on lymphocytes in general, your immune system, and they stop it from going attack mode on everything to repair mode. Effectively, it allows your body to repair, especially in vitamin D rich environments like the nerves here. So when you have vitamin D in combination with it's a protein that's present on the outside of the myelin sheath called CD47. And whenever a lymphocyte or an immune cell bumps into this protein, they go from aggressive mode by default to repairing specifically that neural. They effectively upregulate the oligodendrocytes to help repair the myelin sheath. They act not just as an immune system to attack it, they act in a way to actually rebuild it and help promote regrowth. And effectively, where this binds into, all of this culminates together, is the fact that your body, this is under my hypothesis, of course, this is to explain this in the context here, but your body has a deficiency in DHA and EPA because it can't produce it anymore because it's so used to having such a huge amount in your body. You effectively have a master class in signaling from having so much saturated, so much DHA and EPA saturating your body, and especially your nerve cells. So effectively, your body expects a huge amount of signaling capacity. It's aiming to have like absolute perfection, effectively, in terms of signaling. And so as a result, evolutionarily, other genes evolved to take advantage of the state that you're in. And effectively, the most common one found in multiple sclerosis is something called HLA-DRB1. And effectively what this does is it massively lowers the threshold for the immune system to be attacking things. And so it becomes much more aggressive and much more strong, and upregulates much faster when inside of a threat or an antigen that's foreign. And so it's effectively in an environment where you have absolutely perfect signaling provided by DHA saturation in all of your nerves and the EPA to protect it, to provide a buffering for it. Effectively, you have a master body. Your body is amazing when you have this saturation. But when you have a deficiency in DHA and a deficiency in vitamin D, both of these issues effectively make it so your body cannot signal correctly. And at the same time, it can't actually be able to express to the immune system to properly stop attacking it. And so when you have such things in combination, you just have autoimmune. You just have autoimmune action massively. Because if you want to think of it, your nerve cells, they need to defend themselves and they need to do this. But because your body's adapted to having such a highly strong immune system to defend off and to take advantage of such a state of DHA saturation. Effectively, your body cannot cope with a modern diet where you're deficient in DHA because it's so reliant on having such a high precision signaling in general to direct the immune system. When it doesn't have that signaling, it's going to just burn everything. It's just going to attack everything, and especially your nerves, because they're so sensitive and they're so weak. And so I have some information here that I can share briefly, but for the purposes of this analogy, and it's so early into the video, and this, I would not like to go into too much detail in this one specifically, because I feel I can present it in a way where I can help people more so in this one. I would love to go into heavy-handed detail about this right now, but this is shortly into the video, and I would like to make it as easily approachable as possible here. So, obviously. Whereas on the right, you can see here that the myelin sheath is massively degraded, and it's being degraded by the autoimmune system. Sorry, the immune system. It's an autoimmune disease because it's automatically attacking your myelin, and your myelin simply cannot signal to tell it to stop because of a number of factors. At the crux of it, MS is a combinatory issue. It's multiple issues that compound into the metabolic state, which is, the metabolic disease known as MS in the modern day. So, for example, you need vitamin D to be able to tell your actual immune cells, your T lymphocytes, your B lymphocytes, all of this. You need them to be told off, and you need them to get away and to stop attacking your nerves. So your nerves would send out signaling. But what if they can't actually signal properly? What if they randomly get oxidized? What if they simply cannot go into the shape it needs to, like the actual shape itself, to be able to fit in and interact with the molecule? What if it can't do that? What if it breaks? And this is what happens when you use lower quality fats than DHA in the in the myelin especially, but also generally throughout the body in this case. It's a dysfunctional signaling pathway, and it's just general signaling in this case, and you cannot signal to tell your immune system to shut off. And I'll go into further detail actually in roughly a few slides, because it very much factors in then. But effectively, because of the factor that you cannot make DHA and EPA on your own, and you're so used to having such a high amount of DHA and EPA in your body ancestrally, just like genetically, you need a high amount of DHA and EPA. So your body has adapted to the fact it has such a high state, and it has effectively specced into genetically having a much more hypervigilant and a stronger immune system, because it's relying on the fact that you have such insanely good signaling naturally. Because if you have enough DHA in your body, like, that's enough to tell your immune system to be by. But if you're so saturated in your body, like you have so much DHA, and your body expects this and it can actually act upon it, it will absolutely have the highest precision you could possibly have in your nervous system. And so your body is like, yes, we need to have a strong immune system because there's no downside. There's just no downside. If we have absolutely perfect signaling, we can have an absolutely strong punch to be able to punch out all of the invaders. Because you have no risk of hitting yourself, because the signaling is just that strong and the defense capabilities are that strong. DHA and EPA, but especially EPA, is what is primarily broken down into this. It's primarily broken down to the body's highest defensive. It's primarily broken down to SPMs, which are basically specialized pro-resolving factors, effectively. And effectively what they do is they intervene with inflammation and they just stop it, and they start the healing process. And it's so good. And especially in a system where it's already so saturated in DHA, where it's got perfect system, you basically have a perfect loop. You have a perfect nervous system. And your body is just like, yes, I need to have the strongest immune system possible, because there's no downside to it. But anyway, I'll get into more of that when I get to the slide later on. But effectively, at a default, most humans require DHA and EPA. However, most people are able to make it on their own. So even in regular humans, it's hard to produce, and only produce at an average conversion rate of, it's around 2 to 5%. It's not strictly 5%, but it's a rough average. I believe that's the upper bound. From ALA and DPA, which can convert for a long process DPA is a bit shorter than ALA, but it can convert in a process to DHA and EPA, or sorry, EPA and then DHA, which we'll get into in a second. I've effectively just talked about that. Okay, so effectively, your genetics adapted over time, over probably not hundreds, but tens of thousands of years. Your genetics have adapted to it. That's all that matters at the end of the day. If you have such a genomic disorder, it's disorder, it's not a disorder, it's an adaptation. But effectively, your genes have adapted to such a lifestyle of subsisting off seafood that it's become... Hello. So I'd like to quickly interject and explain why I'm not actually cherry picking or oversimplifying in this context. For example, when I'm talking about ELOVL2 here, and I surmise it being GG. So it doesn't exactly have to be GG specifically to have that effect overall. And I'll explain quickly. So in the concept of genetics, there's something called epistasis. And effectively, it's when multiple different genes come together to produce a single, or not a single, but a resultant function, or loss of function in this case, that results from multiple different genes. So effectively, in the case of ELOVL2, you could be missing the main one here, so RS953413. You could be having this in just GA or whatever it is, the actual variation, or maybe not even that. But if you have every single other marker being in heterozygous or homozygous in the loss of function variation, then it's effectively saying as ELOVL2 is in GG. So I can further bridge this over to the FADS, because there's multiple different ones that surmise into this. And if you want to think of it, when you talk of this one here, this is just like a general FADS rate limiting step. This one isn't a specific one, but it affects both of them individually. The main two being FADS 1 and 2. Whereas FADS 3 is yet another rate limiting step in this process. And so when I'm surmising, say, FADS 1 being in GG or heterozygous or effectively in a loss of function variation, I'm just saying overall, when you compare the effective linkage between the alleles that have an effect on this, it effectively is whatever it is I'm simplifying it to be. So in this case, it's loss of function. So I just like to clarify that to showcase that I'm not cherry picking it. E to EPA, but you have a tiny amount of EPA basically at the end, and you just can't convert basically any of that into DHA. You're converting a tiny amount into it. And I'm not going into much detail about these like currently right now, but it really does compound, and it is a very strong effect, especially in a modern diet combined with a massive omega-6 intake, because all of these enzymes, funnily enough, they all follow through the same processes that omega-6s also take. They take up these enzymes, they bind to them, and they effectively make them useless. And it's it's very, very, very bad, especially, so effectively, if you have all of these, which if you are from a coastal population, it's very likely you do, you effectively are a specialist. You need DHA and EPA, and you need fish to survive effectively. And I've done a quick map here. So effectively, this is the association of, so these ones over here, obviously, I just talked about all four of these. These are the ones that basically lock you into taking high amounts of DHA and EPA. They force you to have the diet you need to be optimal. This is your ancestral, what makes you ancestrally dependent on DHA and EPA in high amounts. Effectively fish. You just need fish. Whereas these genes over here, all of these will take advantage of it. Right. But first thing, I should explain a concept. So there's a concept in evolutionary biology where if you have a selection event for something, and these two genes, they're on completely different chromosomes, a lot of these, I say the ones over here specifically. For example, these are on FADS, these ones are on chromosome 11, I believe. Whereas these ones are completely different ones, especially COM2. So effectively, these ones effectively evolved to take advantage of the state of being high in DHA. That's why they're in green. These ones are beneficial because of it. Whereas these ones are red. These force you to have this. You need this in the modern day. But that's not really a bad thing, because you need these. Effectively, this is your body preparing itself, because it's like, we want to go full throttle, but we can't be running on like diesel. We need like absolute the best fuel known to man. And that's what fish is, and that's what omega-3s are in this case. So, for example, I'll look at the first one here. So, out of the genes formed to take advantage of the huge dietary load of DHA and EPA, the number one that really comes off to me as like a epistasal benefit, like it's just a massive, like these absolutely, like I would warrant 100%. I'll say not 100%, but effectively within the line of reasoning of you having so much DHA and EPA, your body wants to evolve and it wants to take advantage of it. And one of the common polymorphisms, sorry, that's associated with higher brain throughput effectively is one called COMT in AA. So effectively this is MET. Okay, so COMT is an enzyme that breaks down neurotransmitters, things like estrogen, dopamine, cortisol, norepinephrine. All of these get broken down by the COMT enzyme. And effectively, if you have it where it's in MET, where effectively you only produce this enzyme called MET instead of VAL, MET instead of VAL, effectively it's 4 times worse at destroying neurotransmitters. And you might think of that as like, hold on, you're just stacking debuffs. This is a really bad thing. But the thing is, the reason that's actually not a bad thing is because effectively it allows you to have 4 times the amount of 3 to 4 times more neurotransmitters in your dopamine receptors, and in all the receptors that would take up those neurotransmitters, they have 3 to 4 times the amount. Effectively, if you want to think of it like, it's basically the breakdown is massively reduced. And this is actually a good thing because it allows you to take advantage of the massive neuronal signaling that you get from having a huge amount of DHA and EPA. Forgot the P there. But anyway, I'll get into much more detail of this in a second. So effectively you have 3 or 4 times more neurotransmitters. And this combines with things like BDNF. This is another one that's VAL or MET. Effectively, this means you have a far more efficient, I say far more, it's like significantly efficient, more nootropic factor to actually grow brains and neurons. Grow brains. Corneal growth is possible, definitely, but that just subsides from neuronal growth in general. And BDNF is a massive promoter of this in general. So effectively, this evolved to take advantage in combination with this. Also in combination with this one down here, NTRK2. This one actually, it benefits off of this, the BDNF. It benefits off of the enhanced BDNF signaling. To then, actually be able to wrap the myelin sheaths on your neurons better. So this effectively, if you have this, this one will be formed in the positive allele to benefit you, to make it so your neurons are more protected because it knows it has more throughput. And you could find this in other systems in the body. I would vastly recommend, but I would vastly hypothesize that you would have a massive amount of, but the highest amount of like antioxidant genetic signaling that would be expressed through the alleles in this sense. Like you would probably have the best version of, say, just antioxidant production. I do know for a fact though, I haven't actually covered it much in this really interesting detail, but there's this one, I was going down the rabbit hole of EPA being hyperresponder, as in your body to break down EPA and use it into SPMs much faster and much more efficiently. I definitely should have added that actually. But anyway, that's regardless. Moving on, why MS is not bad luck. It is a combinatory factor of a dietary mismatch because you are made for incredible neuronal signaling, but you are not feeding yourself anything to actually build up the neurons. You need the fish, you need the actual DHA and EPA to build neurons to actually become actually signaling correctly. you need this, and you're just not feeding yourself it. And especially in a low vitamin D state, you cannot even have any defense. Like you can't even really signal to defend yourself. Your actual nerves, they can't signal to defend itself if it doesn't have enough vitamin D as a cofactor or as an actual implement in the signal that's used to set them off with I think it's the GA47. No, it's not the GA47. Sorry. Whatever the signal it is that you use to, I'm having a mind fog right now about that. Anyway, but effectively, if you have a FADS deficiency and you have no DHA and you have low vitamin D, well, it's just, of course you have MS. Of course you have massive neuronal degeneration. That's just a consequence. It's just a direct consequence that would come off of it. You don't have any resolvins, which are effectively the derivatives of EPA and DHA that are broken down by the body intentionally to resolve inflammation en masse because it's so effective for that. It's the body's masterclass in defending itself, basically from DHA and with DHA and EPA metabolites. So things like pro-resolving factors, so like resolvins, maricins. There's another one as well. You don't have any buffers to stop the healing from, or stop the damage from continuing. You don't have any building blocks that actually build up your neurons, and you don't even have any vitamin D to tell your actual immune system from stopping attacking yourself. It's like a three-way act where you just are like being damaged because you can't meet what you were meant for. Your body was built for a coast, and your body still expects it. The ancestral environment for hundreds of thousands of years. I say hundreds of thousands of years. It's maybe tens of thousands of years. It's likely occurred in recent Neolithic times, but I mean, that's just a postulation. This is a hypothesis at the end of the day. I don't fully have that on record, to be honest. But I can make an assumption, and this very much is in line with this. This is a measured assumptions that very much buy into the actual guidelines of what MS is. And I'll go into that in a second after this. It's very interesting. So for Northern European and coastal populations, they ate cold fatty fish daily. Herring, mackerel, salmon, cods. This provided at the very least 2 to 5,000 milligrams, so like 2 to 5 grams a day of EPA and DHA. That's a huge amount every single day with a huge amount of vitamin D. Like, we're in the north, like it's very, very low sunlight. You are not getting much UVB. You cannot produce enough vitamin D3 to be able to actually optimally function, especially in the winter. So ancestrally, you'd be getting a good amount of vitamin D. Sorry. Along with a humongous amount of DHA and EPA, just from 200 grams. That's not a lot. That's really not a lot of fish. They were probably getting much further than that, to be honest, but I'm just estimating it's around 200 grams-ish a day. So the genetic consequence, when a food source is so consistently, abundantly available, the body stops making what the food already provides, you know? The FADS genes that synthesize DHA and EPA eroded across generations. The genome adapted by optimizing for an external supply rather than the internal production. And in that marine environment, a powerful immune system was not a risk. This is basically building into what I was talking about just now. Your nervous system signaling is so perfect, it's so amazing that, unlike your ability to heal and defend itself, it's so perfect that your body is basically adapted to have a better, or just not better, but just a much stronger immune system. As a result of it, just to take advantage of how much better it is, how much more control you can have over your immune system. Sorry, is what I meant to say. In that context, better in that context. So a powerful immune system was not a risk; it was an advantage. And this is another thing of a genetic factor that is correlated. Okay, so let me go over the 4 main factors that are correlative with MS. So you have smoking, you have genetic factors, you have diet, so vitamin D, and you have what's the final one? I believe I've said 3, but like the 4th was I don't actually remember. I'm sorry, but anyway, it's effectively the genetic one is over 50 to 60% of them have HLA-DRB1, and this effectively gene switches your immune system to have a much higher, lower activation range. So it's much more powerful. It will act much more. It will attack things much easier. But it's safe. It's safe because it would be safe. If your body was actually healthy and it had enough DHA and EPA to have a functioning nervous system that was so strong or so good at signaling that it just would never have any downside to it. And effectively, HLA-DRB1 just allows a huge amount of like it's just better. Like if you imagine getting a plague and having a stronger immune system, of course you're going to be like better. You're going to live longer. You're going to be safer. And obviously having that in combination just means you just don't have any issues at all. And you have much more disease resilience. So obviously in the modern diet, when the marine diet disappeared, seed oils flood your system, which is primarily omega-6, by the way. Most seed oils, things like rapeseed, canola, sunflower oil, all bad, all very, very, very bad for this, especially if you have MS. You should absolutely be minimizing these at all costs. So effectively, the FADS variants, once represented rational genetic economy, now represent near total inability to self-synthesize DHA and EPA. So effectively, you can't make DHA and EPA anymore at all, unless you're getting it from your diet. And the result is, because you already have this hyper-developed immune system, this stronger immune system, now that you can't signal, you're effectively a sitting duck because you're just punching yourself and you can't tell yourself to stop. You know, you don't have the actual signaling to tell it to stop. You're probably deficient in vitamin D, so you can't even send the signal. And you're missing the anti-inflammatory buffer that SPMs and EPA directly provides. So the immune system that once protected you is now destroying you in a modern environment. So it's a direct consequence of what it is. Right. So myelin. I believe, yes, okay. Well, this is me talking about the nervous system being actively replaced by omega-6s and just inferior quality fats. It's not all omega-6s that got replaced. There's actually a gene that activates called SBRF2, I believe. It sits in the Golgi apparatus, and effectively what it does is when it's low on DHA, it starts producing saturated and monofats to replace or try and replace. It's like a shoddy plaster of what DHA should be. It's like a very bad replacement, but it's for emergency use, effectively. So effectively, your nervous system is full of suboptimal fats. And in a modern context, this just means you are extremely vulnerable, like extremely vulnerable. Because we're surrounded by so many toxins on a day-to-day basis. You don't have any myelin on your sheaths. Well, you don't have any myelin. Your myelin is massively dysfunctional and it's being damaged by your autoimmune system. Which is, you can just think of it as your nerves can't move because they're trapped, because they're just being damaged so much by everything. And it's so easily damaged as well. They're not flexible. They're vulnerable, they're rigid. And oxidation is basically the physical degradation of that sheath. You know, having omega-6s bind in place of omega-3 in your immune system, anywhere in the body that's like truly critical, but especially in the nervous system, is absolutely catastrophic because it's unstable in a way which is not beneficial to the body. It's unstable like it's polyunsaturated fatty acids. So it's omega-6s, like DHA, but not nearly as useful as DHA to the body. And the body can't actually make use of it in such a way. It's basically like an intermediary that's like, it's just dysfunctional. It's basically useless. And it's very easily damaged. And because it's not as like signaling beneficial to the body, it just effectively is just like a sitting duck, and it just gets damaged so easily by inflammation. Sorry, but not just by inflammation. Sorry, but by general toxins in the area around it. Things like, you know, if you have a very high ROS, what I'm talking about here, reactive oxygen species, which is effectively oxygen that is uncontrolled in your body. It's attacking your body in an uncontrolled manner, because your body wants to oxidize things in a controlled manner, in like everything in the body. It wants to control it. But when it can't control it, it effectively damages everything, because everything wants to be in a specific state in your body, and you directly oxidizing it will just change its state. It will turn it, it'll rust it, you know? It's like, it'll literally rust it. You can just think of it like rust. And obviously, if that attacks the myelin, and the myelin is already unstable as hell because it's got, you know, omega-6s and bad fats that have been put into it, or it can't even be wrapped in the myelin in the first place because it's not got enough DHA. Because that's another thing. You need a minimum amount of DHA to even be able to wrap it around the myelin. Otherwise, it will just instantly fall off effectively, or not even be able to do it. Like the oligodendrocyte that tries to put it on and wrap it around the neuron, it simply will fail. It cannot do that. So effectively, in an omega-6 laden sheath, it will oxidize, fragment, and trigger the immune system to identify those fragments as foreign invaders. Effectively, you know, if you have omega-6 in your myelin, and that omega-6 then oxidizes and gets attacked, your body then your body then will attack it, because it's then thinking it's a foreign invader, and it's also that it's dead at the same time. Through different pathways. So effectively, it's just one big cascade, and especially smoking, that's a massive thing that raises ROS, which is reactive oxygen species, which just damage your entire body, massively promote inflammation. It's a massive cascade, you know, the cytokine storm, which is effectively just like the consequences of inflammation in a way that's going to attack from the immune system. And you can't switch it off because you don't have enough nutrients in general, but especially vitamin D, and especially because you don't have EPA. EPA is absolutely perfect for resolving inflammation. It's the body's best anti-inflammatory mediator. And you simply being lacking that in your diet, and because you can't make it on your own, you just can't make it. You can't make it. You can make it in such little amounts. It's effectively negligible. You can't make it on your own. You are so vulnerable, and you just get rapid degeneration. So yeah. Why the current MS guidelines are massively failing patients. Multiple sclerosis is a chronic autoimmune disease in which the body's immune system mistakenly attacks the myochip. We've heard this before. But anyway, the current state of affair has made... Yeah, okay, sorry. Effectively, the general MS guidelines, they tell you to just sit and wait and try and mitigate damage. And this is just not good enough. This is not good enough. You absolutely, like, the body is so amazing, you absolutely can heal. And to think that it's not even identical, because they think it's too complicated, they think there's so many associations. I'm linking all these associations to one thing, and this is a direct thing that meets every single causative factor known about MS. And this is made by, like, a college student. I'm a college student. I'm 20 years old. Like, a team of scientists could have done such a thing. Regardless, any statement. This is just not good enough. You know, the NHS guidelines, they say it's a condition that cannot be currently cured, and the treatment can only be often helped to manage it. So effectively, they want you to mitigate side effects. They don't actually want to help you. The only thing they ever actually recommend to you are immunosuppressants. They want you to suppress your overly active and hypervigilant immune system. But they don't even want to postulate the question as to why that actually is. They don't want to put it in an actual mechanostatic, actual line of reasoning that holds true and actually makes sense. They don't want to actually do that. They just want to take the easy path. They just want to say it's not curable. It's not known. The cure is not known, apparently, because it's a metabolic syndrome. Of course it can't be, because it's a combinatory factor. Every single metabolic syndrome is a combination of other things. It's all a current, like it... Sorry. Every single metabolic issue will come from a failing metabolism. And a metabolism is based off of multiple factors. So it's inherently going to have multiple reasons and multiple causes. And especially here about multiple sclerosis. Because, you know, if you didn't have enough DHA and EPA, that'd be fine if you were a normal person. But if you have the genetic backing where you can't physically make DHA and EPA, that is a massive issue, and you just simply cannot regenerate the tissue that's lost or defend yourself really even against it. Anyway, back to the matter. Immunosuppressants, they're not good enough. They're not going to heal you. They know it's not going to heal you. They even admit it themselves. But all they know is they want to mitigate side effects. So anyway, to me, it's just a clear, logical, ancestral approach in genetics. I'm not even telling you to stop taking your immunosuppressants. I think it could even be beneficial to have them in regards to try to heal, because it would put the silencer or help silence some of your hypervigilant immune system to let some of the regeneration happen. But I simply ask that you have a very high fish diet, very high in DHA and EPA, very high in general micronutrient load, and exceptionally low in omega-6. You want to avoid omega-6 at all costs. So seed oils are an absolute no-no. You cannot be having that on this diet. Absolutely not. I say on this diet, on this recovery plan, because this is just not how you're meant to be. Like, omega-6s are the antithesis to who you are. You are actively destroying yourself in a way that's not even like, it was smoking. You know you're going to destroy yourself. With omega-6 and all this, it's seeped into every single aspect of food, every single fast food is caked in omega-6. Nuts are omega-6. Like, they tell you that's a healthy thing as well to have for MS and such like this. They even, the NICE guidelines, the NICE guidelines for the NHS, they recommend against prescribing omega-3s. Just even as a general, like, pill, form that's not even as efficient as eating, dietary fish. They subscribe to nothing that's actually conducive, in my humble opinion, to actual scientific reasoning in this case. And obviously this is all hypothesis, and this isn't actually grounded in studies. Well, I'll get to one study later. Well, two studies later. But well, yeah, that's not a direct recommendation. It's merely, I ask that you simply change your dietary factors to accommodate for this. Even if you don't want to believe me, I promise you would feel better. At the very least, just try and implement this. You don't need to stop taking your immunosuppressants. Though they are bad, in a sense of they're not actually going to cure you, they will help mitigate side effects, which is beneficial in this case. I simply ask that you would have a very high fish diet to accommodate for this. Now, let's go back onto immunosuppressants. They suppress B-cell activity and dampen the autoimmune attack on myelin. And effectively, they're just plasters. They're basically just plasters. They don't restore and rebuild myelin sheaths. They do not fix or work or heal the reason your immune system is attacking your body in the first place. And they absolutely do not rebuild damaged nerve tissue. This is all common sense. It's just emphasizing how, like, it's not a solution. It's not enough to have all of this. Taking this one random immune suppressant, because there's so many. There's like at least 50 at the very, very minimum. Different immune suppressants. It's crazy because they all suggest to, take your gabaline or whatever. This will not fix you. Not scientific reasoning. This is a hypothesis, of course. This isn't actual. This is a hypothesis. But yeah. Anyway, I follow a clear line of reasoning that actually incorporates what science truly is, which is effectively trying to actually find a genuine reason and not just reduce things down to a simple factor of, your autoimmune disease, it's rampant. It's just attacking your nerve cells. Why? Oh, I don't know. Because it's genetic factors, And it's definitely, it's also because it's the vitamin D, and it's also because of this, and also because you live up here, and then I'll give you all these wacky regulations, not regulations, but recommendations. And all of this is not based in an actual scientific line of reasoning that is holistic. It's not holistic, which is the reason. This is why I believe my hypothesis to be so omnipresent here, because it fits into an ancestral line of reasoning, as well as meets every single dietary association known with MS. And I will show you even a study in a minute. But there was literally a study from the 1990s where they literally tested adipose tissue, which is fat tissue, of people without MS and people with MS. So 40% of the people without MS had DHA present just in their adipose tissue. But people with MS, it was completely negligible. They could not detect it in any fat tissue, which is insane. Anyway, I'll get into that later on. That's a very it's the Nightingale study of the 1990s. If you want to look that up yourself, my study will be linked below in this video. I recommend you would read this. This is a point of reference, more so, or a line of reasoning. It's very hard to read. I do understand that. I am trying to make this video to be in a way that is actually comprehensive. I will leave my hypothesis paper in the description below, wherein you can have a look at what I've said about the studies. But I will go into much greater detail in the next video, breaking down individual factors, my arguments for and against, as well as my general line of reasoning to explain it in even greater detail, as I don't want this video to drag on too much, so I apologize. The study will be linked below in this video. I recommend you would read this. This is a point of reference, more so, or a line of reasoning. It's very hard to read. I do understand that. I am trying to make this video to be in a way that is actually comprehensible. But at the end of the day, it's a scientific hypothesis, and I don't know. I don't know. I would just recommend just researching it on your own to come to your own conclusion. Again, this is a hypothesis. This is based in theory, but it's based on a good line of reasoning that I believe to actually characterize what MS actually is in this regard. Anyway, so this is the WHO stance. Effectively, they're saying the exact same stuff as the NHS. They're completely ignoring anything remotely talking about the fundamental aspect of what what nerves are actually made of, which is effectively DHA-rich lipids, and certain other high-quality fats. So yeah. More drugs. These ones are more. I believe these ones are D-cell ones as well. Oh, except for glatiramer. Yeah, glatro. I can't say it. I'm sorry. I apologize. This is my first video, so you do have to account for that. Anyway, every drug on the WHO essentials list targets the immune system, the attacker, and not one of them addresses the structural vulnerability of the tissue being attacked. Effectively, what I'm saying is they're just looking to suppress and redirect, not actually to try and, heal your nervous system. It should be seems as the most logical solution you could possibly have. If you're having a neurodegenerative disease, you would want something to try and promote, regeneration, regenerates. You would think you would try and have something like that, but no. They simply postulate that they do not know the cause, and that is horrific to me. And I do not support this. And I say I do not support this. I take issue with the guidelines. I take issue with the guidelines in this regard. So, yeah, this is effectively what I've just said. This is a summary. Okay, so I'll quickly summarize everything because this is a very long video, and I'm sorry it's been very long. Effectively, throughout your ancestry, people in the places most obviously correlated with the highest rates of MS, you were eating at least 200 grams of fish a day. I would postulate, at least throughout history. I'm not talking about like post-agricultural. I'm talking like throughout history. Or even when you were agriculture, you still had a high amount of fish in your diet. So 2,000 to 5,000 milligrams of DHA and EPA a day from cold fatty fish, things like mackerel, high quality salmon. I wouldn't really recommend salmon because fish farms, it's not as optimal. Plus ruminant organs. Because the thing is, a key factor of all of this that will make everything worse, no matter what, is having a low nutritional diet. You want to be optimizing your nutrition. Very much. You absolutely want to optimize your nutrition at all costs. Because it's just everything. Everything will be better or more stable in a high nutritious state. If you have sufficient amount of B vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, copper, all of this, you need all of this. And all of this, obviously the most high nutrient dense food on the planet, is liver. I would recommend eating lots of ruminant organs to supply yourself with all the carnitine, the phosphodiacetylcholine, all of this. But anyway, quick recap. FADS pathway adaptation. FADS 1, FADS 2, and FADS 3 I missed ELOVL, but that's fine. Loss of function variants accumulate across generations, and you effectively lose the ability to have endogenous synthesis. Because you dietarily, it's just so high in DHA and EPA, you have abundance. And in this state, of course, your body adapts to this high state of this absolute abundance, and it decides to become, higher immune activity. Sorry, I'm talking about down here. This is just more so about having an incredible immune system that has incredible signaling and incredible anti-inflammatory signaling. So going down here, back to part 4 down here, the immune hypervigilance. HLA-DRB1 being 50% present in the studies on genetic testing on MS patients. It's very, very telling towards a story of having an optimal state throughout of your ancestry, where you're healthy enough to be able to have such a strong immune system. There's a reason you have such a strong immune system. And this clearly provides a line of reasoning that, chains together why you would have such a thing, and especially, why it'd be such a key part of your diet as well, and why it's so easy to have. But another thing to be said, though, is the fact that having such a hypervigilant immune system, it doesn't just come from this one gene. There's many different genes. It's called polygenic methods. There's different genes that have the same overall outcome, You could have many different ones, and they could still end up at the same place of having a hypervigilant immune system. So yeah. And in the modern collapse, you can't make any DHA. It's disappeared completely from your diet. Seed oils are flooding your system. FADS variants persist, but they can't compensate. They can't compensate. They can't rapidly adapt for modern society. You can't suddenly start making tons of DHA and EPA. Your DHA and EPA effectively approaches zero. We'll assume you have HLA-DRB1 here. But effectively, your hypervigilance, it loses any of its buffer, any of its control. Your myelin becomes the target. And effectively, this is what multiple sclerosis is. This is effectively what it is in the modern day. It's a culmination of different factors leading to a state. It's a dietary mismatch with an evolutionary specialization, So I recommend 3 to 5 grams combined DHA and EPA daily from actual fatty fish. I don't really recommend the DHA and EPA fish oil, things like cod liver oil and such like this. I mean, it definitely supplies you with some of it, but you can't really account for the rancidity factor because it's left on shelves for so long, and it's actually hard to truly normalize an amount that does not get damaged and oxidized over time as a result. So to bypass all of this directly, there's actually a form of DHA called PC version, which is effectively in its phospholipid state, which is effectively, it bypasses all of the it's effectively like almost 100% absorbed into the body. It's the highest absorption amount of DHA and EPA in the body. And because it would be in the fatty fish itself, it's mostly preserved. You'll lose a small amount from cooking it, like maybe 10 to 20%, but not a significant really amount. I say not like enough to discredit the other 80%. So effectively, I recommend 200 grams of fatty fish a day at the very least. I would recommend. I honestly, I recommend higher, but I do understand that fish is somewhat expensive, so you must accommodate for that. Grass fed ruminant meat. It doesn't really have to be grass fed, but ideally it would be grass fed. It just contains every single cofactor and micronutrient that your body would need. It's very high in protein. Yeah, there's not much to really say about that. I recommend it. Liver and onions is very tasty. So again, to recap, 200 grams of fatty fish every day, some beef liver, liver and onions. And I want you to eliminate seed oils completely. Linoleic acid monopolizes the FADS enzymes massively, and it competes at the membrane incorporation into the nervous system, but also just in your cells in general. That's another thing. DHA is, I've told this earlier actually, but it's present in the lipid bilayer of every single cell. I say every single cell. So the majority of cells in the body, they preferentially want DHA there because it allows the cells to perform better, to signal better, They just need that. And another thing is vitamin D. you need vitamin D. I'd recommend supplementing it, but you also get a sufficient amount from your diet anyway. But I would also still recommend supplementing it anyway if you're in high latitude or Europe anyway. Well, anyway, thank you for this. This will be part 1. I will go into more detail, much more genetic detail, to add more reasoning and academic proofing to my explanation, because I very much have it, especially in my document I'll link below. But I go into even more detail than that because that's not actually everything. But anyway, it's the majority of it in a sufficient hypothesis academic state. Anyway, thank you very much for listening.